Hello, everyone. My name is Brandon Plasters. I got a lot of heavy client-side development with CakePHP 1.3 and Flex 4.1 examples here. I've actually done a few real-world examples with CakePHP and Flex, some with Flex 3. The demo I have here tonight is going to be available on GitHub, and I'll give you guys all of that information so you guys can download with it, play with it, or whatever. Just check it out. I'll give you guys a little background here. Let's see, I've been Cake developer and Flex developer for over 3 years now, and I've been a PHP and Flash developer for about 9 years, and also heavy jQuery developer for 4 years. And like I said, I've used these for a number of applications for different companies and different clients that I've had as well. So a couple of clients I had that I'd like to demo tonight that specifically use the Cake and the Flex. One was for the University of Washington. I created, for the linguistics department, I created an application for students to enter in phonetic inventories, which are all the sounds that people make for all the languages of the world. And for a lot of their master's thesis, they had to enter in all this information. And we had to have a kind of complex keyboard and interface because it used a lot of Unicode. So at the end, I'll demo that. And I did an entertainment site and still working on that too. Actually, we're updating to a new version of it. It's for actor comedian T.J. Miller. He's been in a few movies. He's been in Cloverfield. I don't know if you guys seen that one. He was the cameraman guy. He's also coming up in Gulliver's Travels with Jack Black, and it's going to be in Yogi Bear movie too. So we're going to try to get his website ready for that pretty soon. That one uses a lot of XML data transfer too, but also a lot of animation stuff as well. So all the guys are like, oh, why would you use Adobe? Looking at Kevin over there, but you'll see. So, all right, the points I really want to cover tonight. Basically, if you guys have dealt, actually, who here has messed with Flex or used Flex? Okay, I got a few guys. And Flash even, ActionScript. Absolutely, yeah. And a lot of the stuff can apply with Flash also, I believe. I think you can use a lot of the Flex stuff in the new Flash now. But don't quote me on that. And if you're banging your head, don't blame me. The first thing to do is when we're coding views, when I'm switching between coding in CakePHP and jQuery and then switching over to Flex, you can actually, I had kind of an aha moment, I don't know, about 1.5 years ago, where you can actually code the structures very similarly. So you don't have to recalibrate and rethink your mind when you switch from a jQuery, a CakePHP app to a Flex app. You don't have to say, oh shoot, now I got to go back to what I'm working on here, CakePHP, jQuery, refigure out how I'm doing it all. Because CakePHP or jQuery or any JavaScript library really, JavaScript's pretty much based off of ECMAScript, which is also ActionScript, is what ActionScript is based off. So the syntax is almost identical, except for ActionScript 3 is it's a lot more robust, a lot more strict with typecasting of variables and things like that, which can be kind of annoying, but it's there and it's very similar, so that helps. Flex, for those who aren't really familiar with it, uses a markup, which is MXML. Very similar, it's just tags. It's an XML variant, just tags, just like HTML with properties. So you can pretty much, when you use the jQuery and CakePHP, it's very similar. And there's actually an analogy I wanted to bring, actually using the MVC analogy to tie it all together, because if you've ever done any heavy client-side application stuff with either of them, you notice that they kind of become smaller applications themselves, MVC structured applications. So we'll take a look at a pretty fun analogy. It's great, guys. You guys are going to love it. It's so fun. It's wonderful. Using XML for communication between Cake and Flex. That's the big one there. And we'll, they both come, I decided to use XML, they both come out of the box, like I said before, with some XML stuff. Flex also has great XML handling. Also using XML model and the Flex for the CRUD, create, read, update, delete. That's where it comes in, where the mini MVC app comes in, where we actually have a model defined in Flex in the front-end view code, where we do a lot of binding to that. And I'll get into that even more so. So let's jump right into the analogy. I'll first start out with the MVC tree analogy that I think works really well. You guys will remember it forever. You'll probably either love it or hate it, so at least you'll remember it, right? So we got the earth, we got that. That's going to be our analogy for, the data. You got minerals, you got nutrients. Perfect. We're going to extract those, right? So you also have, which also ties in together, you also have water and soil tables in there, so that makes it, you got tables there, an analogy already, That's pretty sweet. You also got data mining as another analogy that you can also use in the earth analogy. So, you can't get much more perfect than that, right, for an analogy? I think not. So when thinking like that, we want to think of models as the roots to extract all the data. And this tree is a little special because the data, it's a give and take. You're putting data back into the earth as opposed to just taking it out like a real tree, but hey, nobody's perfect, right? Even trees. All right, the controller is the trunk, but, we've gotten this before. Fat controller is not good for the MVC tree. So we want to make it look something like this. The tree, the controllers, they're skinny now, and there's multiple controllers. You're going to have also multiple, components in there too. So it fits the analogy, but kind of odd, right? Or is it? Or have I seen this somewhere before? I think you guys have too. This guy. You can make a tree however you want. Bam, there you go. Now you got your MVC chair tree. Simple solution. So, obviously the next thing would be the leaves would then, of course, be the views. There we go. Cake Fest, Cake Fever. In this case, we have the MVC tree. So, bam, behold, it's done. Remember, double routed, going back and forth. The MVC tree, so wonderful. Double rainbow. You guys love it. So we got our MVC tree. We're done there, but in our examples here, we're going to have, instead of the Cake JavaScript code, we're going to be using Flash objects for the view generated from Flex. So that's what our view code is going to be. Now, like I said before, heavy client-side development of any kind, Flex or CakePHP, JavaScript, is kind of like a mini MVC. So we open that up. Look out, we got another structure that can kind of fit that inside. So let's go to our demo. I made, on my blog, I made a little demo, which I'm going to show you here soon. But inside the code, we can kind of see just how we can force it a little bit, but it makes sense as a kind of watered down MVC. But at the top, you can define your libraries in the code. In this example, we have some JavaScript, jQuery in there. You can also define in jQuery, you can define JSON objects or whatever for holding data, variables, etc. Inside of the controller highlighted part, we have, it's kind of odd document ready. Our init handlers are very similar to in Cake before filters or before filters in the controller there, kind of analogous to that. We also have some, business logic functions here too, which are just some event handlers and whatnot, and passing data back and forth. Also in the view at the bottom here, note I do have elements down there, which we'll get into that later about how that can also tie into the analogy. So in this case, it's better to just flip the tree around and have the models on top because that's just how everyone kind of codes anyway, so we're just going to leave it at that. So now let's look into an element because we can take this even further. Inside the element, it's pretty much can be a smaller application as well. So we have even another MVC tree in there, a recursive loop of MVC trees, if you will. In this element, we have some buttons where we have some mouse click handlers defined, and just a button with the handlers defined in the actual markup. So. Okay, so here we go. Let's show a widget on blog and compare the Flex example. Okay, so this is my blog site here. I have, well, it's not wide enough. You can't see my whole name there. I'm going to have to get a wider screen on this laptop, or maybe another iPad or something. We have, I've got two apps here. This one here is the actual Cake jQuery app. The one below is just the matching Flash app that I've written in Flex. It's just a simple, has a couple handlers, just like in the code before that I showed you, and that was the widget that had the jQuery code. So it's kind of hard to read here. I have a bigger image here of all this. Here we go. I don't know if you guys can read that. Oh yeah, that's pretty good up there. So if you look, we have just a very similar structure as the code I had listed before. The left side here is the UI widget as an MXML file in Flex, which has just pretty much the same functionality. We have some creation complete handler, which is similar to the document ready handler. We have the business logic, some imports here, the button controls import, and also some custom components at the bottom, the grow button, which is similar to the grow button in the element in the CakePHP. So, and you go and you recurse further into that, you got your structure here that is pretty much synonymous with the grow button in the jQuery CakePHP side. So, obvious now, yes, but when I was coding before, I had all this code kind of all over the place, mixing in, the business logic, adding just rows of JavaScript or action script blended in between all the HTML or MXML markup, what have you, and it was kind of all over the place. But this structure here seems to have worked for me, since. And hopefully it'll help you guys out too, if you decide to go that route. Or you can just throw it out the window. I don't care. It's up to you. Yeah. So. All right. So with that, I'll segue over to my the demo app that I made for this presentation, which is Flex app. And let me just pull that up. All right, now we can't even see all of it here, but we can zoom out here. Can't zoom out. F11. Thank you. What's that? You win an iPad, thanks. Oh wait, I can't. Still can't zoom out. Refresh. A little scroller. There we go. Maybe that'll do it now. Oh, maybe not. Flash fail. Dang. Man, I thought I had a win for a second there. Looking at reach. Is there any way to increase the resolution of the screen, do we know, or would that take out on? Move that. Where's that? Properties. Auto hide. Bam, still not enough. Just not enough. I need to get okay. Well, I guess I can show you half of it. So what I made here was basically it's just a book organizing application. On the missing side, all the way to the right, there would be a book column there that has just a list of books that we can just basically add by just doing test. And then you can select a category. This is a tree. These are kind of weird categories, I know, but I just ripped this right from the CakePHP documentation. So just to prove that, you know, it's exactly the same. Pick a year, it's got a drop down. We got shelf placements, and here's some colors you can select, and then we can then save, or let me just try. I can save. No, we can't save, but you can save it, and it'll add it to the book list, or and it also has delete. Or if you select a book, it'll be able to. You can edit the changes, and it'll populate all of these lists with the selected information. So it's kind of it's just all interactive, and it just kind of keeps everything consistent with how I'm going to demonstrate how to code it using. It's more of a model-driven development approach where, like I said before, we're using an XML model inside of the view. So switching back, so this is the tables that I had set up with the relationships. Books belongs to shelves, books belong to categories. Books has and belongs to many colors, so pretty simple. Let's go back there. Okay, now inside of Cake, I have basically one controller set up where it draws all the information together, which in what I call it, and what I have as the data controller. So it's basically pulling from that categories table, which is has a behavior that is actually I extended a behavior, which is the tree behavior, because to make an XML populated this way, you have to have an array nested, and the out-of-the-box behavior for the tree behavior didn't do that. So I just added some functionality to that, and I'll show you that in a second. Not time for CRUD yet. So we have, if you look below the categories data on the left side, we also have the colors list. We also have the book list, but I collapsed those down just to save room. If you expand those out, it'll also have their selected colors listed below. In the H has and belongs to many associated data for the selected data. And then the shelf list at the bottom. And all those will actually go into each component that was in Flex on the right side. So, but you couldn't see the book one there, of course. And all the books would populate that, and I'll explain in a second here. There. Okay, well, let's look at the Cake stuff. And here, so our data controller, we have pretty simple. It's just just doing some find alls, and then the category is the nested array, which is the extended method from the tree format behavior, which is in the category we just act as tree format custom behavior, which is this, and it basically takes the results, nests it, and supplies a nested array set that we can use for the XML. Okay. So that outputs that, it populates the data, and you get your lists right from the Flex. So inside of Flex, what happens is we have an initialize call. After the application is initialized, it runs this init function here, which is right here, and then we run getListData.send. Now, getListData is an HTTP service that we have defined as getListData, and this just points to that data controller. And in that, let me show you actually the view of that controller so you can see what happens. This is just serializing all the data that was passed from the data controller. So we're just basically serializing it all, wrapping it in some data tags, and then passing it to Flex. And when Flex receives it from this HTTP service, we're just going to have the result passed to the list load. There's a result format E4X. I'm not going to get too much into that, but that's just Flex uses E4X, which is like ECMAScript for XML, which is kind of like a search query, mini search querying system for XML, which is what we're going to pass, and it's what we're going to use to just pull certain information out, like the primary, like the IDs of the books and whatnot. So we're going to look at our list load function here, and this is all we have. It's just taking the data from the event result, which is all that XML from the data controller, and then basically just passed into each Flex component. So the components I have listed, categories, colors, shelves, books, are all written out down here. So we have the categories components, categories component, which is a custom component that I made. And I'll explain why I made some of these custom components. We have the colors list component here. And we also have, let's see, we have the books list, which unfortunately we can't see. And then the shelves list down here. So it's taking all that XML data, just carving it up and serving it to these components pretty seamlessly. So, okay, now we have time for all the CRUD information. So, let me just get my notes. Awesome. Okay, so I was telling you before that we have a setup inside of the Flex app here, and this is the XML model that we have defined. Now, you can actually make this dynamically, but for the purpose of this, I just laid it out statically so we can see and kind of visualize how it's working. So as you can see now, we have basically it's an empty XML object. So we're going to use that. So how we're going to tie that in with all of our inputs, our lists, our books, our colors, and all that. We're just basically going to supply this with data, and then all of the inputs that we have, the lists, are going to be bound to this XML, so that when you change it, it updates automatically. Now that's a concept in Flex that, and there's other, ASP has it too in other languages, but you can actually define data binding, which we can say, I want to data bind this ID, the book ID, to the books list. Whenever, or to the save book, so whenever that book, or I'm sorry, let's do it better. Let's say the name, so I want to bind the name to the name property in the application here. So when we change this test, that will automatically populate that XML here. So when we bind it, we're gonna basically go two-way binding. So how it's going to work? The whole idea is having this XML model. That's all we're going to really update, and change. So when you're adding the inputs into all these fields in the list, it's just going to populate the XML list with the data, and then we can actually take that XML object and just post it back to Cake so that it can just deserialize the XML into an array, and then save it just as is. Now this is kind of the idea behind model-driven development, I think, which the idea is to try to leave the model as untouched as possible and just kind of link all of your inputs and lists and data changes to that, and then you just pass it back and forth between Cake and Flex. And in this example, it works pretty well, and there's a lot of possibilities with it. And I've used it before in some of my other applications. So. On a side note, I just basically I added to the home page. A little feedback here. Added to the home page this code, which is using the SWF object. It's the easiest way to add Flash objects to a page, so I recommend using it. It's just JavaScript and then some simple XML or HTML layout stuff here. So. Okay, yeah, and here's the idea in illustrated, the two-way data binding detail. It doesn't really come out of the box, so I had to make some custom components, especially for the cover colors here. At the bottom, you can see it's taking a node that's populated with children nodes and using that as a list to populate the items there. So. Out of the box, the list functionality doesn't do that, but we can customize pretty much any of the components in Flex pretty easily. So we just pretty much extend them. But in Flex, you can use the markup language. Let's take a look at the colors list here. It's the most complicated one, and just define new components this way. So we take a list. And then we can add our own, still following that MVC tree watered down version. You can still get the structure here, and it's laid out pretty simply for you to play with. So I won't get into too much of how the details of it works, except the custom part I did, where it'll actually take the list of the XML data, and then it just iterates through. The only properties that it really has is a selected indice where you can change. So if you have a list of items, let's say 6 items, Flex only really knows what item that position is at. So the first item list is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, selected index. So we're going to iterate through that list, look at that XML data that was passed into it, find the matching primary key IDs that we supplied in the database, and then just match up the index here into an array, and then that's just handed off to the selected indices properties of that color object. So that's probably the more complex one. there's a little more to this, as you can see, just how you set up making a data binding to these items. You have to define what properties you want to be data or bindable in this case, if you make them custom. So in this case, we're going to be calling this selected IDs bindable, and when we up it, you have to add this meta tag to it to actually tell Flex that this property is bindable, and then outside of this component in the main application, you can define you can actually use that to be bindable with the XML model here. So in the application itself, we can define the binding with another markup tag just called binding. And what's new to this, or I can see we have the bookname.txt file associated with the selected data model, which is that XML model, book name node of that XML model. And we can just, and new to Flex 4, you can just define the two-way property to be true. So now it's going to bind both of those. Either you change it in one area, it's going to change the input. Change the input, it's going to change the XML, and vice versa. So. Cool. Let's see how we're doing on time. What we got for time? Okay, we're burning through. Cool. So. What else we got? Okay, here's where you can download it. I got it on GitHub, and you can also check out my blog too for the references, and I'll put up the slideshow and whatnot. And I'd recommend downloading the app so you can at least play with the full functionality of it. Otherwise, I'll go out and buy a bigger projector over at Best Buy real quick if you guys have some patience. But let me show you guys some of the cool stuff I've done here. With it. So we got, start out first with, I'll just do my local host because the internet's probably really slow. Actually, I think I would open. All right, this is the application I made for the University of Washington Computational Linguistics Department. They've used it pretty extensively. They have over, there's about 2,000 languages in there out of, I guess they've known about 7,800 languages in the world. It's the largest collection of language data for these phonetic sounds. So it's just a list of all possible sounds you can make, with your mouth in a language that language uses. So we're gonna check out some of these. So here's what we have. Here's some inventories, and these are, you got your languages here. They have a 3-letter code. The actual Flex part is in where we edit these. So I'm just gonna edit this one here, so you can kind of see this in action. So this is this is what they needed. This is their chart that they use. As you can see, there's just a big list of a bunch of inputs. We can click on it, and it'll actually populate what's already been added to all the lists or all the languages. It'll take that character that's for that specific input. It'll search through all the languages, find the characters that were available then, and you can select one there, or you can create your new character And this here is the keyboard that I was talking about that actually has, you can just kind of build your own character here, and it's got all kinds of Unicode stuff gets pretty wacky, but they use it. It means something to them. So, and some of these normal lists, I didn't download the whole database. Unfortunately, you guys can't see this. You guys can't log in and edit all their data. Sorry. So you can see that, and that's the whole concept. All that is pretty much based on using this idea of having an XML model inside of the view. So we use that in this application as well, and then this one obviously a little more complex, and I was using Flex 3 at the time, so some of the binding stuff wasn't as fluidly written, so I had to define each one-way bind, so it was just huge lists of binds. So we can check out let's check out TJ's site. I can show you a little more graphical application. Where everyone's trying to log in on it at one time too. That's always a possibility. Actually, and I think I got booted. Well, we can look at our localhost version. It's actually editing it, so let's see if this one works. I can see my keyboard. Oh, that's not it. It's really hard when your input is only like an inch big here. That is what she said. Thank you. Thanks. Didn't know she'd have the nerve to say that. Reset it. Come on, crumple. I was in the middle of the update, so I'm going to try the live one again. If you guys could hold off on your Twitters and your Facey Spaces and whatnot, appreciate it. There it goes. Okay, so we have all kinds of wacky stuff on the site because he's kind of that's just his personality. We had a lot of fun making this site, and we're continuing having more fun with it. Here's some fun. It's not really. Get out of here, debugger. What happened? You guys all logged on again. Gosh, my chance to show up, Kevin, and man, failing every time. Yeah, it looks like the internets aren't going to let me do that this time. It is a big file. I mean, not that big, but so. But with that said, I kind of burned through the presentation. If you guys got any questions, we can kind of pad this out, or we can go get our drink on soon enough. So, you guys got any questions about, the XML stuff or Flex in general, or tips on how to get the internet working or zooming out of my Flex app? Okay. Yes, sir.
I'll play.
Cool.
Do you any of the Flex MVC libraries, like Cairngorm or anything like that?
I looked into it, but I've never used it like for a wide application. It just almost seemed like a little bit heavy. Like Cairngorm, not so much. That's more for I think if you have multiple developers, I think that's more for what that's geared toward. But being a solo developer, it seemed not to be necessary for my case. But there was another a Flex MVC framework out there I was playing with. I can't remember. I think it was, but it seemed to be more of a little bit more complex, a little more heavy for just at least messing with the XML data transfer stuff, and the client side stuff I was using it for wasn't too super heavy. Like for instance, like this case or in TJ's site, we're not using a lot of data. Probably 50, 60 rows of data, or a couple hundred at the most. So using a model for that wouldn't be, or MVC's actual framework inside of it was, it didn't seem that worth exploring in my case. But I wouldn't say it's a bad idea because it's kind of similar here. There's another step too beyond that is actually using AMF PHP. I don't know, has anyone used AMF for anything? Yeah, that actually might be a better application for it, I think. You tell me. That would be the next level up because that's really where tying it to the back end without really having a front model possibly would be able to use that. Plus, it's a lot faster, especially for heavy data sets. So. Any other questions?
You were going to share where you were going to post your code?
Oh yeah, I got it on that final slide there. Right there. That's my blog site. And that's the direct link to the GitHub site where you can download it. Everything's in there, yeah. I put the latest version of Cake 1.3 is all in there too, so you can just pretty much download it and set your database up, and it should be good to run. So, cool. All right, thank you guys.